So I know what you guys are all thinking. Wait a second, Courtland Sutton, I mean, isn't he just the guy who only had a great season last year because he had an elite quarterback in Joe Flacco throwing the ball to him? And yes, of course, Joe Flacco is elite and no one will ever argue the contrary. But no, Courtland Sutton is actually very good himself. And I think he's one of the more underrated players. I think that he had a quietly great season last year. Again, there's so many good receivers in the league right now. I think people just kind of have a hard time of keeping track of them all. But I do find it interesting how it almost seems like when there's sort of a breakout wide receiver star, people don't even want to talk about them sometimes. They want to just forget they exist and only talk about the receivers that we already know and love. But Courtland Sutton's going to be a new receiver you're going to learn to know and love. And so I figured I'd make a video breaking him down and breaking down his tape. And also, I think that, I kind of owe him a video after I made what turned out to be a controversial statement on my Judy video, where I said that I think Judy could end up being the number one receiver for Denver. I think he probably will end up being the number one receiver for Denver eventually. And many people took that as a slight against Sutton. It really isn't. I'm just very high on Judy, and I think in the next couple of years, he will end up being the number one guy. But either way, I think they're going to have two number one guys. And so let me just explain why I like Sutton so much and why I think he's so underrated. So we'll start things off with this one. It's going to be there's a cover one hole concept, actually cover one robber, but same thing, cover one robber concept, and Sutton's going to be running a route right over the middle. So, okay, bad route, right? This is not the kind of thing that you want to throw to. But what I love about this is watch how Sutton runs this route, where first he runs over the middle, and so there's not much separation right here, but he's fine with that. He knows that you don't need separation for the entire route. You just need separation for the time that the ball is coming to you. So he kind of just purposely doesn't run close enough to the middle of the field at that point. So then he can just cut a little bit over the middle. He gets that quick separation. There wasn't a big window, but again, elite Joe Flacco, he's never going to miss any throw ever. So, just a good job by Sutton of getting open when he had to, and there was enough separation where Flacco could make the play. Just a good play, and I think he does that a pretty good amount where he just helps out his quarterback, I mean, that's a receiver's job, is to help out the quarterback, and then the quarterback's job is to help out your receivers. But this play is a great example where it's going to be a play action, it's a cover 3 zone, and Sutton's going to be running over the middle. So again, if you watch this channel, you understand why this play is effective. Linebackers run in, Sutton can get open over the middle. And after the ball is snapped, you notice that it's working, but it's not working incredibly well. But one key thing to notice is that you look at the 3 Raiders linebackers, 2 of them are a lot closer into the middle of the field than the third one. There's another one who's, out of those 3 Oakland players who they were trying to fool with the play action, 2 of them are inside the 35, and one of them is just outside of 35. He's about that, there's about a 3-yard difference between them. So what is Sutton going to do? Well, he's going to slow down. He's not going to keep running at top speed. He's going to slow down, which allows Flacco to make that throw. If he kept running at a top speed, he probably wouldn't have had an open enough window to make that play at that time. So just a good job of allowing himself to be in the bigger gap and coverage longer, so it could be a throw and a completion. This play is another thing that kind of shows off what I like about him, where so it's going to be a cover 1 play. It's man coverage, and he's running a route that's going to be deep. He's going to run towards the sideline. And what you're going to notice is that the player who is in charge of covering Sutton, he screws up here. He thought it was zone coverage when it's man, which is going to allow Sutton to get completely open through really no, credit to himself. And so now it's just the 2 players who are covering the middle of the field have to run over and try to make a tackle. So, okay, why am I showing this play, right? He basically just got lucky. Yeah, I guess good enough job to get open, but still, you got lucky because there was a screw up. And that is true. But the rest of this is not going to be luck. And one thing I love about receivers is the guys who can break tackles after the catch, and that's what Sutton is going to do. Not only getting around one of them, but getting around both of them and turning what was already a great chunk play into a touchdown. That's the great thing about having a guy who's 6'4", 220 pounds. He's a big guy. He's tough to bring down, especially for these smaller corners and even safeties. It's just tough to bring a guy down like that, and he can use that to his advantage. If he gets open, he can really make some plays. I also do like his route running. I think when you see a guy who's 6'4" and can rack up yards, you think, okay, I get it. He just uses his height to his advantage. That's not really the case. He is he will, obviously, but he really does a great job at just being able to run routes in general. On this play, it's going to be a one-on-one matchup, and he's running a deep route. But watch how he does this. And first, watch how he gets very close to the middle of the field. I mean, he's almost at the hash marks right here. He's continuing to run in. And this does a couple of things. One is it's going to get his assigned man to believe that it's going to be maybe a route that's not going to be deep towards the sideline. But two, it's going to get Harrison Smith, who in fairness is already in charge of covering the middle of the field, but it's going to get him to move even closer towards the middle of the field because he's expecting Sutton to be running in that direction. So this way, when Sutton cuts back, there's not a ton of separation between him and his assigned man, but also the safety, Smith, he's been taken out of the play. And the other bright side is that Sutton can track this ball, whereas the defensive back, he had to just watch Sutton this whole way. He has to have his back turned, so he can't get around to try to make a play on the ball. So now Sutton is the only guy who can really have a chance at this ball. It's either going to be a big completion or it's just going to fall incomplete, which are two options that Denver is fine with. But because of actually a pretty nice throw, but watch how Sutton is able to track it and make the grab. Just a very, very good play from Sutton. Really, the entire play was fantastic. Yes, the catch at the end was already just a highlight reel level catch in general, but the only reason he even had a chance at a ball deep down the field was because of how well he ran that route. Just a great play as a whole by Sutton. And, listen, that there's a reason why people always talk about route running being so important. And even when there's really great coverage, I mean, that's about as good as you can play against that type of coverage or, against that type of route. He was still able to make the grab. So that's kind of one of those plays where it's like, I don't care who's going up against you. It could have been, Darrelle Revis, and that's still probably not a completion or an incompletion because it would be a completion because of how well ran that route was and how great of a catch it was. Can you expect to do that 10 out of 10 times? Well, no, obviously not. You can't expect to do it probably 7 out of 10 times, but the fact that he can do it at all, I think just, goes a long way. This plays another great example where what's going to happen is that it's going to be a cover 2 man coverage play, and, Sutton's going to run over the middle, so this is a pretty good route, but the problem is, and, what you're going to see right after this ball is snapped, is that the safety who is deep, he can easily now just look over, see, okay, it's a route over the middle, got it. I'm going to step in, I'm going to try to take away that play, It's not a terrible route, but it's a route that can get taken away, so bad play, right? Well, no, okay, I'm lying a little bit. This is not actually the route that Sutton is going to be running. He saw that there were 2 safeties deep, and he knew that if he cut like this, he could potentially get a safety to bite, maybe think that it's going to be a route over the middle, then he can run deep and get past him, and it's going to work. He gets wide open, and if that was a perfect throw, it's maybe a touchdown. Joe Flacco would have made a perfect throw. We all know that. But in all seriousness, that's a very tough throw to make, and just getting the throw in general is great. But I think that's just kind of what Sutton can do, is he can just make these unbelievable plays, and you have to think as he gets older and as more pressure is taken off him with a better receiving core that's been put around him, you just have to think the sky is the limit for him, and I personally do think the sky is the limit for him. I almost said, man, it feels like it's been forever since the Broncos have had a really good offense, but then I just remembered that literally 7 years ago they had like the best offense ever. So maybe not exactly, but it's definitely been a minute since I feel, for whatever reason, it feels like, I don't know, that Peyton Manning dominant team just feels like it was forever ago. But going back to the 2020 team, listen, this team is looking like they could be really good on paper. They have a good receiving core, I think a good young quarterback. They have a good running back grouping. Their offensive line wasn't great last year, but the bright side is they appear to have made some moves to improve it, especially in the middle of the line, so we'll have to see how that works out. But on paper, this team is looking better and better, and so it'll be interesting to see how good their offense can be next year. And, I've said I think this is at least a playoff contending team, and I think I'll predict them to make the playoffs. That's what I think. But what do you guys think? Again, somehow I got a little bit sidetracked. Obviously, this video is just about Sutton, but it's also about the Broncos as a whole. How good do you think the Broncos can be next year? And also, how good do you think Sutton is? Do you agree with me that he's pretty underrated? Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.